I'm a guy that's 24. Each day I build some more. I like episode 7 and episode 8. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here, back in with another video, and this is going to be a review of my minifigure scale first order transporter MOC. It has 2,300 parts, it is 17 inches in length and 7 inches in width, and I actually sell the instructions to this. So if you want to add one of these bad boys to your collection, I'm selling the instructions for $15 US. They're in PDF format, step by step. To get them, just send me an email to wakeupufm@gmail.com. If you want, this will be in the description, as well as the pinned comment on this video. I really like this design because it's a pretty utilitarian design. It's obviously very inspired by the D-Day Higgins boats, and it serves a very functional purpose. It is just a troop transport for the First Order. We see this vehicle all over the sequels, so that gives you a lot of opportunities to display this in various MOC contexts. Taking a closer look at my model, you can see I kept the front half of the sides pretty bare, which is mostly accurate to the design we see on screen, but the back is where a lot of the details start to show, specifically this section right here. This was a very complex section to design, just having these various angles all come together in here and fit relatively seamlessly. I'm very proud of how this all came out, and I even have the little fin sections in the middle of this. This was all very complex to design, but very fun once I got it all to come together. I did also put a lot of thought into the engine sections as well, and the engines are, I wouldn't say iconic, but I think they're very memorable. Anyone who watched The Force Awakens, they will definitely remember seeing the back of these in these V-shaped engines with the trans blue lights in there. One of the other things I appreciated that they included in this design were these fins back here. These we see in various Star Wars vehicles. They're on the back of the Snowspeeder and the U-Wing, for example. So it was a cool thing to see, they're keeping technology at least somewhat consistent between various Star Wars vehicles. So that was actually fun to implement and just added even more detail to the back of this vehicle. There's also these little protruding, I guess this is armor to protect the engines, and I don't know, they look pretty unique. Like it makes an otherwise very rectangular vehicle have a little bit more dynamicness in the angles and shapes, so I quite appreciated that addition. I actually incorporated a bit of detail on the front, so you can see this front section right here is angled towards the middle, and that was actually a very important thing for me to capture on this design. It's not a perfectly rectangular ship, there are just the most subtle of angles, so being able to incorporate that into this design, I think made it look very nice. And then if we go further back towards the middle of the top, you can get a better look at the designs that are built into here. They're just two trapezoids that face opposite of each other, so that was fun to incorporate. Normally you just build plates or tiles right here and keep moving, but I did want to try to incorporate as much detail as possible into this model, especially since most people just kind of view it as a big gray rectangle. Moving further towards the back, we have one of my favorite sections of this vehicle, and that has to be this turret section. So the gun, I tried to put quite a bit of detail into. I'm using some of those roller skate pieces on the sides, and I like this so much because, we don't really ever see it used in canon, but I like the idea of this thing kind of patrolling through a forest or something and just having a troop up here manning the turret. And speaking of a troop manning that turret, this hatch does actually open, so you can see, you can open it up and there's a stud to stand up a minifigure. Let me go ahead and grab one actually. And you can actually sit a minifigure in here to be manning the turret. I love that aesthetic so much. That looks incredible to me, especially from a pulled back view. Especially from a pulled back view, there's just something about the red of the Sith Troopers contrasting with the actual ship that makes that look just so cool and interesting to me. I don't know what it is about those Sith Troopers. If we keep moving along, we get to the piloting section. So this is a big block, but it does open up. So you pull that open, there's a little interior in there, small console and a little screen, and of course studs to sit the pilot minifigures. So once again, gonna get my handy dandy Sith Trooper, and actually it's a little bit easier to access if you pull these top tiles off. I actually somewhat designed this to be removable. You can actually go ahead and set that minifigure in there. One of the more difficult things about designing this was keeping the form factor of this pretty thin. Like, I think ideally it would have been 3 studs, but trying to make this to where you can fit a minifigure in here and have the sections removable to be able to access it pretty easily was a little difficult. That's why it ended up being 4 studs, but I think overall it didn't affect the aesthetic of the vehicle too much, especially when you're building at this scale. It made it a little bit easier to justify making that 4 studs wide. I also have to talk about the bottom of this vehicle. I spent quite a bit of time trying to incorporate as many details as possible into this, once again, to just give what is otherwise most people will view as a big gray rectangle just more detail. And I love the idea of having MOCs look great from all angles. So you can see it's fully smoothed out on the bottom. There is a slight curve on the bottom going this way and even this way from front to back. So I tried my best to reproduce that. Here you can get a better look at that curve. And then from the top, you can see it does kind of dip down towards the middle and then go back up towards the back. So just little things like that I really wanted to do for this model to make it detailed all the way around. It does feature some landing gears, and these are actually removable. So if you want to display this in flight orientation, you can actually just pull these right off. It actually works pretty well. And finally, let's look at the interior on this model. This front hatch actually opens up and down the way it does in the film, so I was really happy that that actually worked pretty seamlessly. You got to give it a little push to get it to stay closed, but the nice thing about that is it's not going to be falling open in any way. The top actually comes off in 2 sections, so there's this front section right here, and then the bigger rear section. It's also probably worth it to take this gun off when you're removing this, just because it does kind of get in the way when taking off that top section. The cross sections book was extremely helpful in helping me recreate the interior of this build, and I tried to do it as best as possible. You have the main room in the front where all the troops are. One of the things that I wish I could have implemented but just wasn't able to is that back room that's basically right under the cockpit section. There basically just ended up being too many structural pieces, and it certainly didn't help that the entire bottom of the vehicle was snot, so I wasn't able to implement that. But fortunately, it's not a room we actually ever see in the film, so you're not really missing out on too much by not having that in this build. Most people are surprised to see that the interior walls here are actually a different color than the exterior walls. You can see the inside is mostly dark gray and the outside is mostly light gray, and I actually love that about this design. I think that it just makes it look so unique. It really does a good job at separating the inside from the outside. And I don't know, it makes it feel a little bit more realistic in my opinion. So I do appreciate that. I included some clips for some gun racks on either side, so you can, have some extra weapons and whatnot on the walls just for your troops lined up. And speaking of the troops, we have studs on the floor to accommodate 18 stormtroopers and flame troopers in this model, which is super important because that's kind of the point of this entire thing, right? I believe if this were 100% accurate, it would actually be able to fit 20. And I mean, theoretically, you could cram 20 troops in here. Like, even in the film, they're standing pretty close to each other, but I wanted them to stand somewhat comfortably, so I settled for 18, and I don't think that's really too negative of a thing about this build. But like I said, if you really wanted, you could cram 20 figures in here. It wouldn't be that huge of an issue. And here's a look at the interior, fully decked out with 18 stormtroopers. One of the views I really like is if you come down here, this is really how you see it in the film, where they're all just kind of standing in there waiting to be deployed. And just, I don't know, I love the view of having them all lined up in there. So it's probably one of my favorite things about this build. But that's gonna finish up the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out this video review of my first order transporter model. As I said, you can buy the instructions to this. The directions to do that are gonna be in the pinned comment as well as the description of the video. I'd also love to know, what do you think about this model? Let me know in the comment section below. That's gonna finish things up, guys. If you like what I do, go ahead, support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.